Welcome to PTE Updates. For more videos, subscribe our channel.
When you arrive at work, you'll plug in your car once again, this time into a socket that allows power to flow from your car's batteries to the electricity grid. One of the things you did when you bought your car was to sign a contract with your favorite electricity supplier, allowing them to draw a limited amount of power from your car's batteries should they need to, perhaps because of a blackout, or very high wholesale spot power prices. The price you get for the power the distributor buys from your car would not only be most attractive to you, it would be a good deal for them too, their alternative being very expensive power from peaking stations. In the past 2 centuries there has been a dramatic change in the role of food and eating in Australian public consciousness. Public discussion of food was largely confined to matters of supply, distribution and price. Towards the end of the 19th century some newspapers were offering regular columns of advice on housekeeping topics, including menu planning and recipes. However, eating remained essentially a private activity, even when undertaken in company. In such an environment, warfare is no longer purely directed against the military potential of adversarial states. It is rather directed at infiltrating all areas of their societies and to threaten their existences. The comparatively easy access to weapons of mass destruction, in particular relatively and low-cost biological agents, is of key concern. Both governmental and non-governmental actors prefer to use force in a way that can be characterized as unconventional or also as small wars. War waged according to conventions is an interstate phenomenon. The small war is the archetype of war, in which the protagonists acknowledge no rules and permanently try to violate what conventions do exist. Spring never came and summer never warmed. 1816 became known as the year without summer. Crops everywhere failed to grow. In Ireland a famine and associated typhoid epidemic killed 65,000 people. In New England, the year became popularly known as 1800 and froze to death. Morning frosts continued until June and almost no planted seed would grow. Short of fodder, livestock died or had to be prematurely slaughtered. In every way, it was a dreadful year, almost certainly the worst for farmers in modern times. Yet globally the temperature fell by only about 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Earth's natural thermostat, as scientists would learn, is an exceedingly delicate instrument. Many people who have written on the subject of allowances say it is not a good idea to pay your child for work around the home. These jobs are a normal part of family life. Paying children to do extra work around the house, however, can be useful. It can even provide an understanding of how a business works. Allowances give children a chance to experience the things they can do with money. They can share it in the form of gifts or giving to a good cause. They can spend it by buying things they want. Or they can save and maybe even invest it. Saving helps children understand that costly goals require sacrifice. You have to cut costs and plan for the future. Promoting active lifestyles can help us address some of the important challenges facing the UK today. Increasing physical activity has the potential to improve the physical and mental health of the nation, reduce all-cause mortality and improve life expectancy. It can also save money by significantly easing the burden of chronic disease on the health and social care services. Increasing cycling and walking will reduce transport costs, save money and help the environment. Fewer car journeys can reduce traffic, congestion and pollution, improving the health of communities. This research led the way for further investigation, and evidence now clearly shows the importance of physical activity in preventing ill health. It is important for us to be active throughout our lives. Physical activity is central to a baby's normal growth and development. This continues through school, and into adulthood and older years. Being physically active can bring substantial benefits, and there is consistent evidence of a dose-response relationship. The greater the volume of physical activity undertaken, the greater the health benefits that are obtained. Taken together, our contributors show that narrative approaches to Australian history are not as simple as might be imagined. There is of course the issue of what should be included and what should not be. What, after all, makes a moment or an event sufficiently important to be included in an official narrative? Just as importantly, the moments and events that are included in narrative histories are open to multiple interpretations.
As far as prediction is concerned, remember that the chairman of IBM predicted in the 50s that the world would need a maximum of around half a dozen computers, that the British Department for Education seemed to think in the 80s that we would all need to be able to code in BASIC, and that in the 90s Microsoft failed to foresee the rapid growth of the Internet. Who could have predicted that one major effect of the automobile would be to bankrupt small shops across the nation? Could the early developers of the telephone have foreseen its development as a medium for person-to-person communication, rather than as a form of broadcasting medium? Tree-ring specialists known as chronology proceed by noting the sequence of wider and narrower rings in a tree cut down in a known recent year, and also noting the sequences in beams from trees cut down at various times in the past. In that way, chronologies have constructed tree-ring records extending back for thousands of years in some parts of the world. A bonus of chronology is that the width and substructure of each ring reflects the amount of rain and the season at which the rain fell during that particular year. Thus, tree ring studies also allow one to reconstruct the past climate. Among their duties, the SLPS will conduct crime prevention workshops, talking to students about issues including shoplifting, offensive behavior, graffiti, and drugs and alcohol. They can also advise school principals. One SLP, Constable Ben Purvis, began work in the inner Sydney region last week, including at Alexandria Park Community School's senior campus. Previously stationed as a crime prevention officer at the Rocks, he now has 27 schools under his jurisdiction in areas including the Rocks, Redfern, and King's Cross. Constable Purvis said the full-time position would see him working on the broader issues of crime prevention. "I am not a security guard," he said. "I am not there to patrol the school." Consider the current situation. Like their counterparts in the United States, engineers and technicians in India have the capacity to provide both computer programming and innovative new technologies. Indian programmers and high-tech engineers earn 1/4 of what their counterparts earn in the United States. Consequently, India is able to do both jobs at a lower dollar cost than the United States. India has absolute advantage in both. In other words, it can produce a unit of programming for fewer dollars than the United States, and it can also produce a unit of technology innovation for fewer dollars. Does that mean that the United States will lose not only programming jobs but innovative technology jobs too?